Kurkuma. All right, welcome back, friends. We're continuing with decimals. We're moving on from 5.2 to 5.3. This is only our second lesson for this module, and we're going to review multiplying decimals. Again, a lot of this in Module 5 should be review. You should know mostly what you're doing, and we should just be making it the best it can be this time. So our objective in this lesson is understanding multiplying whole numbers, using that understanding to multiply decimals, using that standard algorithm, and being able to explain the steps to the standard algorithm to your peers, so you can really make sure that you understand how to multiply. But first, we're going to do a little bit of modeling. So we want to make sure we understand what multiplying decimals mean. Because if you remember when we went back to Module 4, when we multiplied fractions by each other, we found out that we always end up with a smaller fraction than two of the factors that we started with. And that is going to be the same with our decimals. Even though I'm multiplying 4/10 and 6/10, my answer will be smaller than 4/10 and 6/10. And the reason why is going to be shown in this diagram here. So remember that decimals are just like fractions, but they're only out of tenths, hundredths, and thousandths, base tens. It's almost like I took a square and only divided it into chunks that are either tens, hundreds, or thousands. So fractions and decimals are basically the same thing. They're representing a number less than 1 but bigger than 0. But with decimals, it becomes a little bit easier because it has that base 10 and we're not dealing with weird numbers like 4s and 8s and 7s. So the first thing we're going to do in order to model is we need to take this hundredths grid and color in 4/10 of it. And if you remember in elementary school, a tenth is one of these big long bars, right? So if this is 1/10, then that means another bar would be 2/10, and another bar would be 3/10, and another bar would be 4/10. So that's 4/10. I'm going to color them in nice. And you do the same on your notes. Okay? 4/10, if I were to go and count every single little box, 4/10 is the same as 40 hundredths. Okay? And then my next number, I'm going to color 6/10. And again, it's going to be 6 of these, in this case, rows. I'm doing them on opposite directions on purpose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And again, if I were to count every little box inside, that would be 60 hundredths. And so when I multiply them, similar to what we did when we did fractions, I'm going to end up just coloring both models on the same grid. And where they overlap is going to be my answer to my multiplication problem. So there's 6/10, and I'm going to go and get my yellow, and I'm going to color 4/10 next. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And so you can see that this orangey section right here, 1, 2, 3, 4 right here, this orangey section, that is my answer. That's where it overlaps, and that is my answer. So if I count every single box in here, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, that is 24 hundredths, and that is my answer. So 4/10 times 6/10 is 24 hundredths, and you can see visually that that is a smaller section of my grid, okay? So this is how we multiply decimals using a visual model, but we are not going to do this. We're not going to draw this picture every time. So instead, what we're going to do is these steps. So I'm actually going to go down here, and we're going to just highlight the stuff you need to write down. So when we multiply decimals, you are just going to multiply normally and ignore those decimal points. I'm going to show you the standard algorithm for multiplying. However, if you need to use a different method, if you know how to multiply using the lattice method, or if you multiply, by chunking place value a lot easier, you are welcome to use that. Okay. You can still do multiplication without that, but because the standard has us focus on the standard algorithm, I'm going to focus on the standard algorithm. So if you do need help with multiplying in the standard algorithm way or in a different way, just come talk to me and we'll figure it out. All right, so that first step that you should have wrote down in your notes was to multiply normally, ignoring those decimal points. Then this whole sentence needs to be written down. You're going to add the number of decimal places in each number, and that's what this is right here. I'm going to show you when we're doing it, but that's this box area. After we add them all up, we're going to place the decimal point in the answer so that, so that it has the same decimal place as the two original numbers combined. And then the last thing we do is use estimation per usual. Knowing, again, we already did this problem, but I could say, okay, 4 times 6 is 24. So I know my answer is going to be about 24. It's going to have the number 24 in it. And then I just need to figure out, is it going to be 24 hundredths, 2 and 4 tenths, or 25 numbers as a whole? Okay. What I'm also going to do now, okay, well, I'm just going to start. So I'm going to multiply normally. So I'm going to go ahead and set it up as a normal thing. So now it does say ignoring the decimal point. So I'm actually just going to do 4 times 6. Okay, and I'm just going to multiply normally. 4 times 6 is 24. I am then going to, you can either add in your decimal points at this point, or you can come up here to your problem and count them. I'm going to add up the number of decimal points. So over here, 4 has 1 decimal place. That means how many numbers are after the decimal? How many numbers are to the right of the decimal? 6 tenths here has 1 decimal place. So that means my answer is going to have 2 decimal places. Okay, so I'm going to start at the end and I'm going to count 2. 1, 2. And I'm going to put my decimal point and I'm going to add my ghost 0. So my final answer is 24 hundredths. So now, using our notes from before, you saw how we did this as a model and using the standard algorithm. Take your time and pause if you need to go back and fill in notes. Otherwise, we're going to move on to some more practice. All right, same thing. I'm going to multiply per usual. Now, normally, if I ignore my decimal points, I would normally put the 3 tenths or the 3 underneath so that it's easier to multiply. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add those decimal points, but not my ghost 0, just so that I can do this part to the right later. But for now, I'm ignoring the decimal points and I'm going to multiply normally. So I'm going to do 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. Now we count our decimal places. I've got 1, 2 decimal places here, 1 decimal place here. So my answer is going to have 3 decimals in it. 1, 2, 3. So my final answer to this problem is 0.639. Good job. Let's do it again. And these two numbers, I have the exact same number of digits, so we're just going to keep it this way. So we're going to, again, ignore my decimal places. We're going to do 3 times 6, which is 18. 3 times 1 is 6 plus 1 is 7. And 3 times 2, sorry. Oh, I'm running out of space over here, so I'm going to write it over here. Sorry. I'm going to put in my place holding 0, and I'm now going to do 5 times 6, which is 30. 5 times 2, which is 10 plus 3, which is 13. And 5 times 1, which is 5 plus 1 is 6. And then the last thing I'm going to do is my 1. So I'm going to have 2 place holding 0s now. And I'm going to do 1 times 6, 1 times 2, 1 times 1. When I add them all together, I'm now going to do my decimal places. So in this number, I had 1, and in this number, I had 1, so I need 2 overall. 1, 2. There you go. 192.78. And again, because this is so much review, we're going to stop here in our practice and we're going to do a little activity. I don't have it on the video, but basically we played a little game in class called the Super 6. It's a multiplying game. You can ask for it in class if you want to practice at home. But in this game, we were told to round to the nearest hundredth. So I quickly wanted to go over this with you. You can add this to a random page in your notes, like underneath one of your notes or any spot that you have extra space. But you should know how to round. Because when dealing with decimals, you might get a really, really big decimal or a really, really small decimal. And so we want to make sure that we can round so we're not dealing with all those digits, okay? So rounding down, if I am rounding to the 100th spot, which is what we'll usually round to, I look at the 100th spot, 5. I look to the right to the 1000th spot, which is a 3, and I ask myself, if it is 4 or less, I round down, and rounding down means I round that number to a 0. I'm turning the 3 into a 0, which means it goes away. And this number here would turn into 4.25. If I look at my 100th spot and I look to the right and that number is 5 or greater, I'm going to round up, which means I need to take that 7 and go up 1, plus 1. So you can see here, boop, that's going to become, or sorry, not the 7, the 8, taking the 8 and turning it into plus 1. And that's going to get me 29.49. Definitely write this down if you do not remember how to round, because you're going to need it. And again, if you need more practice problems, come see me. I can give you the Super 6 game or another practice page. And just keep practicing multiplying those decimals. And I'll see you next time. Bye.